Hey, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and I'm bringing you guys a lot of Star Wars videos over the next week. I'm starting with this title. This is going to be Star Wars The Force Unleashed, and the development of this game began in 2004, and the game was finally released in September of 2008, and sported all sorts of new bells and whistles that created such an interest in the game that it sold over 1 million copies in its first month of release, and according to Wiki has now sold over 7 million total copies. That's pretty impressive. The game received pretty mixed reviews across the board, and the reviews were enough to keep me away from buying this title until I got a used copy sometime last year. The game definitely sports some pretty cool features, but has a couple major flaws as well. Let's go ahead and get into the review. There were some complaints of minor screen tearing from a few major reviewers, but I personally never saw a great deal of this during my playthrough. If it is in there, it wasn't a big enough deal that I noticed it. Graphically, the game looks pretty good, especially the lightning effects and force powers that emit from your character. But some objects like broken trees and other breakable objects look like a mangled mess of graphics when bent or destroyed with your powers, but were necessary to use some of the more cooler physics that the game incorporated. The cutscenes were decent looking, but nothing to write home about, but the backgrounds and the actual game world were both very impressive. The game world in particular in most levels felt really open and epic in scale, so they certainly did a nice job with that aspect of the game. The game comes with a 90-minute soundtrack, and in my opinion the music and the sound effects in this title are its real shining point. Some music was pulled directly out of the movies and other tracks were composed just for this game, and there's enough quality content in the music to really make the game fun to play, and was the one aspect of the game I enjoyed the most. No matter how many times I hear the classic Star Wars music, I never get tired of it. The game's story takes place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and it revolves around your character being trained by Darth Vader himself. The game opens up with a stage in which you're controlling Vader, which was a very cool concept that set a nice pace for the rest of the game and its story. According to Wiki, LucasArts spent 6 months developing and writing the story for this title, so it was certainly taken pretty serious with the direction they wanted to go in and what they wanted the game to be about. I personally thought the story was interesting and decent, but I felt the story in the sequel to this title was much better done and enjoyed it much more than I did with this one. There have been a lot of expansions released for this title, which I'll be covering some in the coming days, but for those that never played this title or The Force Unleashed 2, here's my recommendation on the matter. If you want a better game of the two, The Force Unleashed 2 is the one you're going to want all the way. The problem is if you skip over this title straight to the sequel, you'll miss a lot of the story development and possibly won't enjoy the sequel as much. On the other hand, I've had some friends pick up this title and not enjoy it enough to want to play the very awesome second game, so it's kind of a catch-22. There's also a very hard to find and expensive Sith edition of this game, which includes a lot of DLC to consider as well, but I'd recommend picking up the used cheap copy of just the original game to make sure you like it enough before shelling out the extra cash for the upgrade. While I personally enjoyed both of these titles, this one in particular sports some flaws that got fixed in the sequels, such as a flimsy and sometimes awkward targeting system, some rather stiff jumping mechanics, unbalanced difficulty, and a camera that occasionally wants to battle you as well. Even with these issues, the game is still an instant classic and a stepping stone to a must-buy sequel. Anyways, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and I'll be bringing you guys many more Star Wars videos to come over the following week.